Hello, and welcome to the Leading Through Crisis Virtual Leadership Summit. My name is Mark Cole. I'm sitting here with the one and only, your friend, John Maxwell. I'm the president and CEO of John's Enterprise, which means I represent over 30,000 members that have been certified by John and our faculty to serve in the idea of leadership. And boy, are they ready to serve the world during this time of crisis. Now, welcome. You have joined us on our third day of this virtual leadership summit, which means you're about 500,000 people late. You're not really late. You're actually right on time. Today is going to be special. It's going to be unique. And John's going to teach part 2 of taking adversity and turning it into advantage. Now, I have to say, if you have missed day 1 and day 2, we still have them online up on this page, John Maxwell's Facebook page, and you'll be able to review these over the next few days. Please take a moment and join us in day 1, day 2, and you are in for a treat in day 3. John, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Now,
very excited.
Let me say this. Again, I've already told you the numbers. We're well over 500,000 people that have tuned in. But one of the things that we're doing is creating a community around this concept. In fact, tomorrow, same time, same place, John's Facebook page. John, you're going to be doing a live Q&A to where real time we will be answering your questions. I did say your questions. In fact, if you have a question, you can go to hope@johnmaxwellteam.com. hope@johnmaxwellteam.com. Submit your questions, and who knows, you may hear that tomorrow. But for today, what I want to challenge you is I want you to lean in. I want you to grab a notepad, a pen. I want you to click share on the screen there and get your tribe, your influence tuned in to today's session. Yesterday, we had well over 3,000 people share this message with their tribe. I want to challenge you to do that today. And I want you to make a comment. I want you to give us what you're learning, what you're experiencing from John real time. In fact, I will tell you this. We have decided, John has decided, for 10 of you that submit a comment today, he's going to sign his new book, Leadership, and we're going to send you a copy. We had 10 people, John, yesterday. We had a lot. We had over 6,000 people respond, but we pulled out 10 of what they learned. Would you like to hear that?
I would love to hear it.
All right, here we go. Nehal Minshai said, John, thank you for such insightful material. We in India love you and respect your ideas, your thoughts, your learnings, and we want you to know you're paving the way for new age and new generation of leaders across the globe.
That's beautiful.
Neha, go to hope@johnmaxwellteam.com. Give them your contact information. We'll send you a book. Number 2, Lori Tisdale. She said, crisis identifies leaders. They stand up and they stand out. Yeah. Number 3 was Davelyn Fulmer Evans. She said, my 9-year-old and 17-year-old started online learning through their public schools today. I'm thankful for these online tools we've used for years that made this available. I think it will be a new way of learning for every age, not just college. So you were big with the 9-year-olds and the 11-year-olds yesterday, John. Nikki, I want you to go to the website and put in your information as well, because she said, John, I'm going to make some lemonade.
Oh,
thank you, John.
Let's all make lemonade. Let's all make lemonade.
You needed to go watch yesterday if that doesn't make sense to you. Twisted Angel Enso said, thank you, John, for being with us during this time of crisis. If we believe in ourselves, we always find an answer.
We do.
We will find a way soon. What we need to do as a leader is to have faith and hope in this time of crisis.
Very good.
Donna Shields said, I am so glad I found out about this virtual leadership summit today. I was feeling stressed, I was feeling depressed, and now you've made me hopeful. Thank you. Marcy Anderson said, thank you for sharing such nuggets to encourage us. I have been following you and applying your teaching in my daily roles at home, work, and church. 3 more, John, because we want to get you a book. George Corey said, I have been contemplating for years joining the John Maxwell team. You are amazing and such a great leader. Count me in. I'm going to join the team.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that.
Jordy Hemstring said, love it. There is an opportunity in adversity. What can I learn from this to turn it into an opportunity? Thank you, John. And finally, the last one, and you need to go watch yesterday because, John, you talked about Chippy.
Oh, yes.
The parakeet.
The parakeet, yeah.
And again, I'm not going to give you any more. That's a teaser to go watch yesterday. But Melissa Curran is referring to Chippy. She said, I'm laughing out loud right now because your perspective about Chippy is so true. I love it. Thank you for inspiring me to share and to lead more. I will never forget how this live summit made me feel in the biggest crisis of my life.
Beautiful.
Thank you, John. On behalf of 500,000 people and counting, thank you for showing us, modeling for us, and teaching us how to model for ourselves, how to lead through crisis. Thank you. Let's go for it today.
Let's go for it, my friend.
All right,
let's go for it. Get that elbowed. I'm so glad that you're with us, and I'm so glad to be with you. And let me just share with you an exercise I do continually. So this is I think what I call a successful habit in my life, and I share it with you because maybe you'll want to apply it to your life. Whenever I finish any kind of experience, for example, whenever I finished teaching yesterday, I pull aside and I reflect and I think about what I shared with you. And I'm always asking myself, what could I have done better? How could I improve it? How could I help you more than I did help you? In fact, Mark, you'll remember this. This was a couple years ago when we were traveling internationally. Remember when you asked me about, John, you seem to be thrilled when you hit a goal, but then the next day you're already moving on to the next goal, and you're basically saying, how could you be so excited about hitting a goal the next day, so unaware of that and moving on to the next thing? And we had a discussion, if you remember, and I want to talk to you about the difference between better and best. I shared with Mark that day that in the moment, right now, I'm giving you the very best that I can give you. And I'm 100% in. I know you're 100% in. We're in this together. And so in the moment, in the teaching, in whatever I'm doing, in that moment, I'm all in, 100% giving you my best. But when I finish, I reflect. Reflection turns experience into insight. And when I'm finished, I pull back and I say, okay, that was my best at that moment. How can I make it better? And so whatever best was when I did it, the next day, best becomes like the floor, not the ceiling, and I build off of that to go to the next level, which is better. So best always hopefully turns into better so that I keep growing, keep improving. And so yesterday when I finished with you, I pulled away, I reflected on our time together, went over my notes, and I felt good. But then I asked myself, okay, how could I have made it better? What could I have done to help you more? Because to be honest with you, I'm reaching out to you right now, and it's obvious that we're reaching out to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. I'm reaching out to you right now, and I feel sometimes like, wow, I would like to be with you. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could just, instead of speaking to hundreds of thousands of people, if I could speak just to you, if I could just sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with you? Because see, when I talk to you, I speak to you as one, although so many are watching and so many are listening. And so here's what I want you to just to understand. As I thought about yesterday, my friend Andy Stanley had a statement one time I love. He said, do for one what you wish you could do for many. And that always helps me because I always think about the fact I can't help everybody, but I can help somebody. And by the way, it's a great statement for you also. But I ask myself, how could I help you? Just you. And I thought if you and I could have a one-on-one conversation, I would probably pull out the advice that my father gave me when I graduated from college and I started my career. I asked him, Dad, how can I be successful? And he told me, he said, John, if you'll believe in people, value people, and unconditionally love people, he said, you'll always connect with people, and they'll connect with you. So I just want you to know, I don't know what you're going through, but I know we're all going through a crisis. But I don't know how big that crisis is in your life. I mean, I think of people who are affected by the coronavirus. I think of families that have had people die because of the coronavirus. I think of people that are in the business world, small businesses that are financially taking a big hit because of this virus. And so I don't know the extent of where you are and the heaviness on your heart, but I just want you to know this. I believe in you, I value you, and I unconditionally love you. And so as you hear me teach the lesson today, take it through that grid, because everything I write, everything I speak about, everything I do always goes through that grid. My John Maxwell team members know that. Of course, they're on this call with us, and they're here joining me in this whole process, but they know that they are people of value, that I greatly value, and I try to add value to them. Well, I want to extend that to our huge family that we have now, not just 33,000 John Maxwell team members, but literally hundreds of thousands of people. But I also want you to understand, as I teach the lesson, I'm thinking about just you. Because my name is John, and I'm your friend. Yesterday, I talked about how we could stay with you during this crisis, and I shared with you three resources that are absolutely free that you can just avail yourself to that will help you and keep us connected together. One is the podcast, and that comes out every week. And if you just go to John Maxwell Leadership Podcast, okay? If you just go to that, John Maxwell Leadership Podcast, you can get right into that podcast. You can be with us, subscribe, and every week I'll come to you. We do candid conversations. They take application of my leadership teaching and pass it on. I hope you can do that. And then, of course, we have through video, we have Minute with Maxwell. And you know that we put, just for this time of difficulty, starting, by the way, Thursday, okay? Starting with Thursday, Minute with Maxwell will have statements of strength for you. And I've done 30 statements of strength. And yesterday I shared with you that I wanted to stay longer with you. So I said I'm going to do 30 more. So literally last night our team got together and we came up with 30 more statements of strength for you. And so I'm going to be able to, with you daily on Minute with Maxwell, be with you for the next 2 months. Just speaking statements of strength into you that will just fill your spirit up and give you hope and encouragement and courage. And then, of course, if you blog, I continually do a blog. If you just go to johnmaxwell.com, you can get that. So those are all resources. They're free. They're yours. Take advantage. Share that with your neighbor. Be a part of this journey, because trust me, I feel like I'm in it with you. Yesterday, I taught about perspectives and, of course, how we view things. Our perspective is how we do things. And I gave you 3 perspective principles about adversity. Let me give them to you right now just as a review so we're caught up. Number 1, everything worthwhile is uphill. And when you're in a crisis, the hill gets steeper. It's just a little bit higher. But everything worthwhile is uphill. All your dreams, all your hopes are there. Secondly, there's always an answer. And even though when you're in darkness and it seems like there is no hope, there is always hope and there is always an answer. And the third perspective principle I gave you yesterday was allow adversity to discover who you really are. Now I'm going to pick up with perspective number 4. Hang on to just fasten your seatbelts, because I'm going to now share with you Numbers 4 through 11. Don't leave me. Stay with me. Trust me. Right toward the end, I got some real good stuff for you. So you've been doing a great job, by the way. You've been incredible in hanging in here with me. Number 4, here we go. Here, perspective principles during adversity. Number 4, develop a positive life stance. Now, a life stance basically is what I call a consistent attitude that influences our behavior. So when I talk about a life stance, it means I wasn't positive just once, or last week I wasn't just positive, but it means I'm continually living a lifestyle and having a life stance of positivity. So let me share you what a positive life stance is. 6 statements. Number 1, life is filled with good and bad. We all agree. Statement 2, Some of the good and some of the bad I can't control. It's just life. And that's very true in your life. It's very true in my life. We have good things. We have bad things. A lot of them are out of our control. Statement number 3. Some of the good and some of the bad will find me. Now, I always love, I bet you do too, I love the good finding me. I'm not always so sure I want the bad to find me, but trust me, it hunts me down and it finds me. The good finds me, the bad finds me. Now, because life is filled with good and bad, and some of it's out of our control, and all of it will find us, the good and the bad, statement number 4 is the most important statement in the positive life stance. Statement number 4. If you have a positive life stance, the good and the bad will become better. I guarantee it. The good things in your life, if you have a positive life stance, they get better. The bad things in life, if you have a positive life stance, they improve. That's what a positive life stance does. Statement number 5 is the exact opposite. You don't want to go there, but I've got to share it with you. If I have a negative life stance, if I continually to think negatively, the good and the bad will become worse. So whatever is good, if I have a negative life stance, I dumb it down to average. And whatever is bad, I start to say, I make it better, I make it worse. And that's why you don't want to have a negative life stance. You want to have a positive life stance, which goes to the summation of all of it. Statement number 6, therefore, I choose a positive life stance. One of my early mentors in my 30s basically said that there's a difference, John, between a problem and a fact of life. He said, John, a problem you can fix. A fact of life is out of your control. The crisis, to be honest with you, is a fact of life. It's out of our control. Now, we're absolutely trying to do things such as social distancing and good things that will help contain it and then slow it down and stop it. And that we're wanting to get through this process. But there are certain things that are facts of life, and we basically can't control them. That's just what they are. But there are the things that we can control. And what I want us to hear very clearly is this. Just because we're in a bad situation doesn't mean that it has to be all bad. One of the greatest leaders, I think, of the last century was Nelson Mandela. And I had the privilege of being in South Africa several times, and on my last visit, they asked me if I wanted to have a private tour over to Robben Island where he was imprisoned. I said yes. The condition was that they could bring a reporter with me, interview me, and publish what my thoughts were. When we got to the island, everything was closed down that day, and I just met, when we got there, one of the fellow prisoners of Nelson Mandela, and he gave us the private tour. And I'll never forget, he shared with us all of the difficulties of being in prison, and how Nelson Mandela, when he came, they take away your name, and they just call you a number from that time. You lose your name. And I went into the prison cell, which was only about 8 by 10, where Nelson Mandela was there. He just had a mat on the floor and just a window maybe this wide with just the bars. And he looked out into a prison yard. And there was nothing good about that cell. He worked in a rock quarry in limestone and constantly had hard labor. And as they showed me all these things, in fact, when I when I came out of his prison cell, the reporter asked me, said, John, what are you thinking? And I looked at her, I'll never forget, I looked at her and I said, I spent 10 minutes in this prison cell by myself where Nelson Mandela spent years. And I looked at her and I said, you cannot imprison greatness. They could put Nelson Mandela in a prison cell, but they couldn't stop his incredible, beautiful thinking of what could be and what should be. They couldn't hide his dreams from him or hold his dreams away from him. And so here's what I said. At the end of that day, as I was on the boat going back to the mainland off of Robben Island, I wrote these things on lessons learned from Nelson Mandela. Number 1, our surroundings need not control our spirit. He never allowed where he was to control how he would think. Secondly, people who devalue us don't determine our value. They may take away his name and give him a number, but he didn't take away his name. He didn't give himself a number. Number 3, dreams can be birthed in the daily grind. In fact, it was in that limestone area, there was a cave that to be honest with you, the soldiers wouldn't even go in. It's where people went in to do their business. And that's where Nelson Mandela met with about 6 people every day on the inside because the guards wouldn't come. And they would talk about the dreams of taking South Africa and ridding it of apartheid. And it was an incredible story, but it was birthed out of a terrible place. And finally, in our brokenness, out of our brokenness, we can be made whole again and bring healing to others. So I just share that with you because I find it very inspiring. Nelson Mandela understood without any question that if you develop a positive life stance, no matter where you are and what you're going through, you can get through it. Perspective number 5. Okay, I could teach all day on this one, but I'll try to hold it to about 4 minutes. Here we go. Feed your faith, starve your fears. And the key word, when I talk about feed your faith, starve your fears, the key word is focus. Because what you focus on expands, always does. So if I focus on faith, my faith expands. If I focus on my fears, my fear expands. What I focus on expands. So now I've got to make a choice. Do I focus on faith and feed my faith so that I can starve my fears? Or do I focus on fear and feed my fear and starve my faith? I just picked up this survey, and I want to pass it on to you. It was a survey that was entitled, What is Troubling You? Interesting enough, right at the top of the survey was financial issues. 39% of the people say, I'm most troubled about my financial situation. 16%, I'm most troubled about my job. And 12% said, I'm most troubled about my health. And I thought, well, this all makes sense, but let me just tell you something that I haven't shared with you that you don't know yet. That survey, What is Troubling You? Financial, job-related, health. The survey was taken in 1992. Things really don't change much. In crisis, out of crisis, we still have basically the same fears. The old Cherokee Indian sat down with his grandson and he told him what they called the tale of 2 wolves. He said, there are 2 wolves within you. One is evil and the other is good. And the grandson said, well, which one will win? And the grandfather said, the one you feed. Wow. So don't feed the beast. Don't feed the beast. The beast is fear. But listen to me carefully. I'm not saying get rid of fear. You can't get rid of fear. Let me tell you something. I have fear. It's not like we get rid of fear and have none. That's totally ridiculous. If you have no fear, you're dead, okay? As long as you're alive, there are going to be negative emotions within you. I'm not saying you get rid of your negative emotions till you have no negative emotions. That isn't realistic. I would never do that for you. I'd never do that to you. But what I am saying is, within you, you have the positive emotion and you have the negative emotion. You got the faith and the fear. And the question is not, do you have them both? You do. I do. The question, who's going to win? If you feed your faith, your fear loses. If you feed your fear, your faith loses. In other words, what I focus on expands because they're both present. So I've got to ask myself, am I a faith pusher or am I a fear pusher? Wow. Well, I can tell you the answer to that. If I'm a person that feeds my faith, I'm a faith pusher to others. If I'm a person that feeds my fears, I'm a fear pusher to others. So let me give you my favorite fear pusher story. I love this story. Salesman goes to his barber, sits in the chair, he's getting his hair cut. Salesman's all excited. He said, oh my gosh. He said, I just want you to know, I'm getting ready to take a business trip to Italy. And the barber said, oh my. He said, what airline are you going on? He told him the airline, and the barber said, I wish you weren't going on that airline. Oh my gosh, they have a terrible safety record. you're not going to get there on time. I just wish you weren't on that airline. And well, the salesman says, well, that's the one I'm on. And so he said, and where are you staying? And so the salesman told him the hotel, and the barber said, I was stationed in Italy. I was there for about a year and a half. And he said, I know that hotel. I said, that's a terrible hotel. Service is bad. I wish you weren't staying in that hotel. Oh, you'll probably be lucky to get towels. And he said, what are you doing over there? And he said, well, honestly, I've got a sales presentation. I'm going to meet with some people, and I'm hoping to do well in sales. And the barber said, oh, I wish you weren't going for that reason. He said, Italians, they talk all day, but they don't buy very much. It's just not going to be very good. I'm so sad about this. Well, by this time, he's got the salesman so discouraged because he's a fear pusher. So the salesman's just sitting there. He's no longer exuberant, excited about his trip. He's just kind of mumbling to himself. And as he's mumbling to himself, the barber can hear him say the word Pope. And he said, excuse me, he said, did I hear you say Pope? And yeah, I was talking to, the Pope. He said, well, what about the Pope? He said, I was hoping when I got to Rome that I would be able to have a private audience with the Pope. Well, the barber now, he's beside himself. He said, this is the dumb. He said, oh my gosh. He said, you're so unrealistic. Bad airline, bad hotel, bad reason for going. But now he said, you want to see the Pope privately. He said, this just isn't going to happen. This is just not good. Well, salesman leaves discouraged. A month later, comes back, sits in the barber chair. The barber says, how did your trip to Italy go? The salesman said, greatest trip I've ever had. He said, you remember that airline you told me that wasn't a very good airline? He said, I want you to know, I laid back in my seat and I fell asleep, slept about 6 hours on that trip. We landed 20 minutes early. It was a perfect landing. Oh, he said, trip couldn't have been better. He said, they picked me up in a taxi, took me to that hotel. Remember that hotel you said had bad service? He said, I got out of the taxi, and they greeted me at the door, and the first thing they handed to me was a fresh set of towels and said, this is for you. And he said, I love my room. I looked out on my balcony. I overlooked and saw the Vatican itself. He said, I went to the sales meeting the next day, and those Italians, they talked a lot, but boy, I'm telling you, they loved what my product was. And by noon, they bought everything. In fact, I got to go back next month for another order. He said, best sales meeting I ever had. And of course, he's telling all this good news to a fear pusher, and the barber just keeps sinking lower and lower and lower. Oh. Then he said, but the greatest thing that happened to me is he said, I got to see the Pope. I had a private audience with the Pope. And the barber said, you got to be kidding me. I've never known anybody that ever got to see the Pope privately. He said, tell me about it. He said, well, he said it was amazing. He said, they ushered me into this very beautiful, long, ornate room, red carpet. And as I entered in the door, I looked clear down to the other end, and there was the Pope standing, waiting for me. And it was so humbling, that walk on that red carpet, and I just felt so humbled. When I got to the Pope, I immediately went to my knees. I kissed his ring. He said he put his hand upon my head, and he said, my son, where did you ever get such a lousy haircut? I love that story. Oh, how many of you, come on, raise your hand. How many of you know a barber right now? Huh? How many of you know barbers? I don't take this personal. I love you. But how many of you know a fear pusher? Because here's what I know. Here's what I know. If you feed your fear, what will happen is you'll get emotionally stuck. When people are fearful, they don't move. I know that for a fact. I had a business that helped organizations raise literally millions and millions of dollars. And we were signing a contract every day up till 9/11. And when 9/11 happened, from 9/11 to the end of the year, no contracts were signed. People were stuck in their fear. Well, if you feed your fear, you'll get stuck. If you feed your faith, you'll move. That's just a fact. All right, perspective number 6. Realize that motions influence emotions. You know, Dr. George W. Crane, great psychologist, said in his famous book, Applied Psychology, he said these words, remember, motions are precursors of emotions. Now, emotions you and I can't control, but emotions we can control. And so Dr. Crane, this was very helpful to me. About 20 years ago, I came across his teaching and his writing. And Dr. Crane had this tremendous statement that I give to you right now. Just write it down, mark it down, it's going to help you. He said, if I feel, which is emotions, then I will, which is actions. Now, put them together. Dr. Crane says, if I feel something emotionally, then I will. I'll take action. I'll take action. So if I feel depressed, what will I do? I will sing. If I feel sad, I will laugh. If I feel fear, I will express faith. If I feel poverty, I will think of wealth to come. If I feel incompetent, I'll remember past successes. If I feel insignificant, I will remember my dreams. He said, today I will master my emotions. So here's the question. What am I doing right now to turn my negative emotions into positive actions? For example, one of the things I'm doing is I'm teaching this lesson. I have found that by teaching this lesson to you, it's a positive action that helps me cope with the crisis that we're in. Here's what I want you to know. Recovery time during adversity separates those who turn adversity into advantage. Let me explain. Recovery time, the time I recover from depression or anxiety or discouragement to a positive action, that recovery time is determined by how long it takes me to take positive action on negative emotions. If you have negative emotions, the quicker you take positive action on that negativity, the quicker you will recover. You see, again, as I've shared in previous lessons, a crisis never leaves us the same. It doesn't. Because during that crisis, we keep saying, boy, I can hardly wait to get back to normal. Oh, my gosh, I can hardly wait. And we have a strong desire for normal. And what I want you to realize is that normal has changed. And normal's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. Ask kids who right now are taking online courses because they can't go to their school. Ask people who are working at home right now online. Normal isn't going to be the same. And Max Dupree said the first responsibility of any leader is to define reality. And the reality is that we are going through massive change, and normal, as we know it, has gone. If the first responsibility as a leader is for me to define reality to you, my second responsibility to you is to help you make those positive changes so that you can get through this crisis. I've been through a lot of them, trust me. Wow. In the 1960s, I saw leaders, John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King. I saw them assassinated. In the 70s, I grew up in that Vietnam era. I mean, in the most troubled decade of all. And I saw the disillusionment of people that saw that they were manipulated and that there was a war that probably should have never, ever begun. And in the 1980s, we saw AIDS come, and then an economic recession was in the 1980s. In the 1990s, corporate wrongdoing, Enron, and companies were beginning to be unethical. Well, 9/11 happened. I've been through that crisis. I was through the 2008 recession. And here's what I've noticed about bad times and crisis is that when things are out of control in a negative way, the best thing I can do is help people get control of their lives. And how do I do that? In fact, it was out of the 2008-9 recession economically that I began to ask, how do I help people get back control of their lives? And that was catalytic for me to start the John Maxwell team. And what I realized during that crisis, if I was going to help people, I needed to be able to do three things. I needed to be able to train them. I needed to bring a good teaching team together, and I needed to put my name alongside of them so that I could add value to them. So that's exactly what we did. We started the John Maxwell team, and we went into 5 lanes of training that we are into right now that just help people tremendously in their life: leadership, entrepreneurship, coaching, speaking, sales. I brought together a dream team faculty who is doing things right now to be successful. They're not talking about how to be successful, and they haven't done it themselves. They have led the way to success. And I said, I'm going to put my name alongside people. I'm going to certify them. I'm going to make them John Maxwell certified. I'm going to take 50 years of my leadership and all of the legacy that I've built and all the reputation I've built, and I'm going to put my name beside theirs. And I'll be honest with you, I took some time considering that, because I thought, well, what happens if somebody does something stupid? And what I determined was I would put my name alongside of people. And yes, there might be somebody do something stupid, but I would rather help a lot of people and have maybe one or two people be a little mess up sometimes than to not help the people I could help. It was the best decision I've ever made, because now as I travel around the world, those 33,000 coaches show up everywhere, and everywhere they show up, the same story. They're adding incredible value to people. Why? Because in the John Maxwell team, we are people of value, who value people, who add value to others. So I just take a moment, just ask you the question, would you like to take a difficult time in your life and maybe take an action that would turn it around? Do you want more for yourself? Do you want more for your family? Would you like to have maybe even a new career or something that would kind of help subsidize what you're doing financially? I don't know, but here's the most important question. Would you like to be part of a community that really has a desire to make a difference in the lives of people? You see, our John Maxwell team members are so excited about what we're doing now, because they realize we're really adding value to literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. But if that last question, if you'd like to be part of a community that intentionally adds value to people, then I would like you to consider becoming a part of our team. I really would. And again, Mark, I'm the non-technical person, but Mark, if they want to become part of the John Maxwell team,
leadwithjohn.com.
Leadwithjohn.com. Okay, well, that's simple enough. Okay, thank you. And so just go to leadwithjohn.com, and we'll get somebody to talk to you, and you can ask the question you have, and then you can make the decision. But this isn't for everyone, but this is for a lot of you who are just kind of saying, I'd like to be part of a community that really, really wants to make and is making a positive difference in the lives of others. Let's look at perspective. Wow, this is a good one. Perspective number 7, today matters. Make today count. I want you to think of this. Adversity is always filled with uncertainty. People are asking me things like, well, what about tomorrow? How long is this going to last? And, John, when are you going to start traveling again? When are you going to start speaking again? And, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know much about the future right now, but I'll tell you what I do know. I do know that if I today make today count, if I today say, I can't control tomorrow, but I can control what is in my hands right now, that will make a huge difference. I wrote a book several years ago called Make Today Count. And in that book, and I'm reading this to you now, I wrote these words, just for today. Just for today, I will choose and display the right attitude. Just for today, I will determine and act upon important priorities. Just for today, I will know and follow healthy guidelines. Just for today, I will communicate with and care for my family. Just for today, I will make and keep proper commitments. Just for today, I will earn and properly manage finances. Just for today, I will deepen and live out my faith. Just for today, I will initiate and invest in solid relationships. Just for today, I will embrace and practice good values. Just for today, I will seek to experience improvement in life. And at the end of all these just for the days, I said, just for today, I will act on these decisions and practice these disciplines. And then one day, I will see the compounding results of each day lived well. What I want you to see is this. If you are taking care of today, that'll help you with tomorrow. Because every day I'm either preparing, taking care of today, so that tomorrow is going to turn out okay, or I'm repairing and going back and trying to fix what I didn't do right yesterday. I don't know about the future. Honestly, I don't. I don't know how long this crisis is going to go on. I don't know. But I do know one thing. If I just take care of today, if I just do the right things now, everything else will take care of itself. So let's review quickly. Perspective principles about adversity. 1, everything worthwhile is uphill. Number 2, there's always an answer. 3, allow adversity to help you discover who you really are. Number 4, develop a positive life stance. Number 5, feed your faith, starve your doubts. Number 6, realize that your emotions influence your emotions. Number 7, today matters. Perspective number 8. Reflect instead of react to adversity. Now, we all know the definition of insanity. The definition of insanity is when we do the same thing over and over again and yet expect different results. Well, that's insanity. Well, those same actions, those things we do over and over again, those are reactions. And what we need to do is, instead of having reactions to what's happening to us, we need to have reflection. And the best way I can explain that to you and share that with you is to share with you how I do this, okay? Because I understand the bookends of success. All is well that begins well, and all is well that ends well. The beginning is all in preparation. Get ready, get prepared, start right. The reflection is at the end. That's why I call them the bookends of success. That's why I shared with you a little bit earlier that after I did my talk yesterday, what did I do? I pulled away, I reflected it, and I asked myself, what did I learn? How could I do it better? What changes do I need to make? So here is my reflection path. It's very simple, but I give it to you. Number 1 is I review by myself. I reflect by myself. I pull away. Every evening, I take specific time and I just ask myself what happened in my world today. And I just go through it. It doesn't take long. I'm talking about 2 or 3 minutes. But I just go back and rewind the day. The second thing I do as I finish that process is I ask myself questions. I ask myself the questions such as, what did I learn today that I didn't know before this day? And I just ask questions about how could I have lived the day better? What did I like about the day? Just ask some very simple, basic questions. And number 3, I talk to myself. I do. You see, Brian Tracy was right when he said 95% of your emotions are determined by the way that you talk to yourself. So I talk to myself. In fact, can I tell you something? The most important person you listen to every day is yourself. That's a fact. So I not only think it, I talk it. And what do I need to hear me say about this day? Number 4, I direct myself. What do I mean by that? Jim Rohn said, one of the best places to start to turn your life around is by doing whatever appears on your mental I should list. Now, this is how I talk to myself. At the end of the day, I ask myself, did I leave some I shoulds on the table? Do I look at this day and think, oh, you know what? I should have done that. I didn't do that today. Oops. I wish I'd have taken action on that. And what you got to understand is I look at that, what I should be doing in that list, and I say, okay, if I've got 2 or 3 I shoulds, I ask myself, can I do this tomorrow? Can I make up for today a little bit? And I try to take my shoulds into I did. Okay? That's huge. That's how I direct myself. And then number 5, I take action myself. I take action. James Russell Lowell said, no one can produce great things who is not thoroughly sincere in dealing with himself. And dealing with myself means I take action on the things I'm reflecting about. In fact, does my reflection lead to action? If my reflection doesn't lead to action, I'll be a good philosopher. But if what I reflect on, I then act on, what I should have done, I then act on. When I do that, all of a sudden things begin to turn. Portia Nelson wrote a beautiful piece. I give it to you. It's It's an autobiography, and here's what she said. Chapter 1, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes me forever to find a way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend that I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open, and I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down another street. Wow. That's taking, instead of a reactive life, turning it into a reflective life. You see, the old rule in business is that when it's over, it's over. But the new rule is when the event is over, it isn't over unless I've learned something from it. I love that. So quit reacting and start reflecting. In that crisis, this one's huge. Understand, adversity makes you relatable to others. The greatest way to identify with other people is to say, I know what you're going through. You see, success has a tendency to widen the gap, especially between people that have been successful and people that haven't. The more successful you begin, the gap widens between you and other people. And what's most important for people that have done well is to not widen the gap, but to close the gap. I decided many, many years ago that I didn't want to have fans. If you have fans, you widen the gap. You want to impress people. You want people to say, oh, you're amazing, and I could never do what you could do. I could never be what you could be. I don't want any fans. I want friends. If you want friends, you close that gap. And what I know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, is that adversity closes the gap. When I can look at you and just say to you that I'm going to have a huge financial loss this year, because I am. I'm going to miss opportunities to help people this year, because I will. I just want you to know, I know what you're going through. The moment that you understand that I understand, that's when the connection begins. Now, I've known this principle for many, many years. Let me explain. Most of you know, for 25 years I was a pastor. And by the time I was 28, I had the 10th largest church in America. And there were leaders and pastors coming from all over America to my leadership conferences. That's when I started doing leadership stuff. And they would come and we would try to resource them and equip them and help them. And I loved it. It was a wonderful time. But I remember one conference that we had back in 1978. And there were 4 speakers. And each speaker had a half a day. And I was going to be the last one. It was a 2-day conference. And so the first speaker spoke, the second one did, the third one did. And they all went along this theme of success. And to be honest with you, they just kept talking to how good they were and what they were doing and how good it was. And the longer they talked about their success, to be honest with you, the farther I felt from them. I just thought, wow, I'm not sure they're connecting with the people. And I don't know, maybe this doesn't happen to you, but if I run into somebody and they're always good and they're always hitting home runs and they're always successful, I look at them and say, wow, I'm never going to get there. I got too much humanness in me, that's for sure. And it just kind of makes me, feel less. I learned a long time ago, bigger people make you feel bigger, but smaller people make you feel smaller. And by noon on the second day, I had to have a reality check with myself, and the reality check was this. My 3 speakers talked too much about success, and they weren't open enough about their struggles and their difficulties and their failures. And so at lunch, I excused myself, and I went into a side room, and I said, I have got to get this playing field level again. And so I prepared a lesson in about 45 minutes that day called Flops, Failures, and Fumbles. And all I did was I wrote down all of the fumbles I've had, all the flops I've had, all the failures I've had. And I filled one page, I filled a second page. I'm still in my 20s, okay? I'm filling 3 pages. And finally, I say, oh my gosh, I've got more material than I'm ever going to get through. And I walked out with my legal pad, and I just looked at everybody and I said, you know what? Let's just talk for a moment. We've heard success for a day and a half. To be honest with you, I'm kind of worn out with success. I just want you to understand that the speakers that talk, they're wonderful people, but they're not that good. And I just want you to understand that with every person that's successful, they have successes in their life and they have failures in their life. And let me just stop here for a moment and say to you, success and failure are not opposites. Success and failure, it's not like you succeed and you don't fail, or you fail, you don't succeed, or if you succeed, you should never fail, and if you fail, you maybe never will say. No. Keep them together, not apart. Bring them together. Success and failure go together. I've never known a person that had a success story that wasn't filled with failure. I just haven't. In fact, when I have my learning lunches, I have 7 questions I ask a person when I want to learn from. I do these monthly. I've done this for 35, 40 years, have learning lunches. And one of my questions is, tell me about your failure. Tell me about your losses. Tell me about your adversity. Tell me about your crisis, because that's where you find the soul of a person. And by the way, wisdom always comes out of crisis. Always. Wisdom doesn't come out of the easy lessons. Wisdom doesn't come out of coasting. Wisdom comes out of trials and difficulties and problems. That's why it's so sweet and so beautiful and so insightful. That's where wisdom comes from. So that afternoon, I spoke on flops, failures, and fumbles. I told story after story of stupid things I did. I'm telling you, these leaders are laughing, they're clapping, they're cheering, they're punching one another. They're looking at me and they're saying, how did he ever build one of the top 10 churches in America? I mean, this kid's done so many dumb things in their life, and I'm laughing at myself. They're laughing with me. When I got done that afternoon, it was like a catharsis. It was like having a healing service. They were on their feet. They clapped. They applauded. That was back when we had cassettes, and at the back we had Wallen sack type of duplicators, and we were putting out tapes. I tell you the truth. For 2 hours after I spoke, people stood in line to get one of those cassette tapes. In fact, I had a guy call me up about 2 weeks later, and he'd driven from Kansas to Ohio. He said, John, he said, literally, I listened to your flops, failures, and fumbles 7 times on the way home. He says, you'll never know what you did for me. Now, listen to me very carefully. When we have adversity, it helps us connect with other people. And I try never. I mean, I have many shortcomings. I have many faults. I have many failures. And listen to me right now. I have fear. I don't like what's going on. I'm very uncomfortable with what's going on. I greatly desire for it to all blow over and go away, except it won't. I have concerns. I have questions. I don't want to at all say that if you're doing really well, you rid yourself of that. You don't rid yourself of that. You just focus on your faith and not on your fears. If I focus on my questions and my concerns, my issues, my problems, then all that will lead is to put me in a bigger hole. And I don't want you to dig a bigger hole for yourself. You don't need, I'm trying to fill the hole in. I'm trying to build a little hill for you to stand on during this very difficult time. But adversity, it'll make you and I totally relatable to other people. The 10th perspective I want you to have during this difficult time is always look for the big picture, because there is a big picture. Now, let me define the difference between a small picture and a big picture. When you have a small picture of a crisis or anything in life, it's small because it's mainly about you. It's mainly about me. Anytime I'm focusing on my problems and, oh, what's this going to do to me, the picture's very, very small. It's just me. I'm in the middle of the picture. In fact, honestly, I can't see you because all I see is me. That's the small picture. Well, what's the big picture? The big picture includes others. Now when I look in the picture, I don't see just John Maxwell. I see you. I see your family. I see other people that are going through the very same thing I'm going through. And that's the picture I want you to have. Because once you see others in the picture, it gets you and me off of ourselves. Immature people basically are people who can only see their problems, only see their issues. It's all about them. Maturity is the process of understanding that, except for one trifling exception, the world is composed of other people. There are billions. I'm just one of billions. And if I just focus on me, I miss billions. But the moment that I see the big picture, all of a sudden, my perspective begins to change. The other day, I read something from Brother Richard, who is a Franciscan monk, and he talked about this crisis. Now, this was a couple weeks ago in Italy, so it's a little old, but it's good enough for me to share with you. So this was his blog. Yes, there is fear. Yes, there is isolation. Yes, there is panic buying. Yes, there is sickness. Yes, there is even death. But they say that in Wuhan, China, after so many years of noise, you can hear the birds again. They say that after just a few weeks of quiet, the sky is no longer thick with fumes, but blue and gray are clear. They say in the streets of Assisi, the people are singing to each other across the empty squares, keeping their windows open so that those who are alone may hear the sounds of family around them. They say that a hotel in the west of Ireland is offering free meals and delivery to the housebound. Today, a young woman I know is busy spreading flyers with her phone number through the neighborhood so that the elderly may have someone to call on. Today, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples are preparing to welcome and shelter the homeless, the sick, and the weary. That's probably before isolation happened. All over the world, people are slowing down, reflecting. All over the world, people are looking at their neighbors in a new way. All over the world, we are waking up to a new reality, to how big we really are and to how little we control, and to what really matters, to love. So we pray that we remember, yes, there is fear, but that does not have to be hate. And yes, there's isolation, but that doesn't have to be loneliness. And yes, there's panic buying, but that does not have to be meanness. Yes, there's sickness, but that does not mean that disease cannot be healed. Yes, there's even death. But there can always be a rebirth of love. Wake to the choices you make as to how to live right now. Today, breathe, listen. Behind the factory noises of your panic, the birds are singing again, the sky is clearing, spring is coming, and we are always encompassed by love. Open the windows of your soul, and though you may not be able to touch across the empty square, sing. Thank you, my dear friend, for just helping us one more time get our perspective right. Number 11. By the way, before I give you the last perspective on adversity that you can help to maybe turn it into an advantage, I'm going to hope that these lessons that I've had, that you'll share them with others, first of all. But more than just share them with others, I'm going to hope that you live with these for the next few days. In fact, go through them again and kind of make a checklist of the perspectives perhaps I talked about that you need to maybe up-level and improve. And make this kind of for the next maybe 3 or 4 days, make this kind of a study guide, a friend that walks alongside of you that just kind of helps you to keep that perspective the way it should be in this adversity. Number 11, adversity makes people stronger. It helps us to really become strong and mature. You see, our willpower acts like a muscle. And the more we put ourselves into situations where we face adversity, the stronger our willpower becomes. It's like going to the gym and exercising your muscles. If you can fight against the natural tendency to take the easy path today, your willpower, my willpower, will become stronger. That's a fact. So what we're doing is we are strengthening right now our willpower muscles. Come on, flex those babies. All right, right now you're going to develop willpower like you have never experienced before in your life. I can remember during the 2008 crisis, my brother and I were together, Larry, and he was talking about losses. He had quite a few losses during that time. And so I asked him, I said, well how are you making it through? And he said, every day I read a poem that's entitled, What Made Me Strong? So I asked him for it, and he gave it to me, and I passed it on to you because I'm talking about strengthening now your willpower during adversity. Here's what Made Me Strong says. For every hill I've had to climb, for every stone that bruised my foot, for all the blood and sweat and grime, for blinding storms and heat, my heart sings a grateful song. These were the things that made me strong. These were the things that made me strong. When he told me that, I pulled away and I began to look at some of the difficulties that I learned from very bad times, and I wrote this down and I pass it on to you. My best lessons were birthed in bad times. I learned people skills by dealing with difficult people. I learned to listen when a friend told me that I didn't. I learned leadership when I realized that others weren't following me. I learned about forgiveness when I needed someone to forgive me. I learned to ask questions when I ran out of answers. I learned not to take care of myself. I learned not to take myself seriously when I understood that no one else did. And I learned to take care of myself after my heart attack. You see, those were the things that made me strong. You are now developing your willpower. So I close with this thought. And by the way, as I give you this last thought, I was reading something the other day that I would suggest that you just pull up. It's a free resource also. It's called The Scary Times Success Manual by Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan really does a lot of good stuff. I read a lot of his material. He's a terrific leader, coach. But I would just go online and just The Scary Times Success Manual. It'll just help you. It's not my resource, but it's a free resource I think that'll help you. Now let me wrap up with this. I was on an executive call a couple of years ago with people that were in the executive club, which basically every month we would make a phone call to very successful leaders around the world. And it was an hour and a half call. They would give us best practices for 20 minutes, and then I would take their best practices, teach leadership off of it for maybe 10 minutes. Then I would ask questions for maybe 15 minutes, and then everybody would jump in with their questions. That's kind of how the call went. So I was talking to a highly successful CEO, and I asked him about the difficult times in his life, either his failures in life or crisis in his life or things that didn't go well in his life, just colossal failures, just all the bad stuff, okay? And I asked him, I said, would you like to go back and do some of those over? Would you like to have some do-overs? You know what a do-over is where if I could, you can't, but if I could, I'd go back and I would change something. I would do over something. I would do it again, but I would do it better or change it. When I asked him about would you like to go back and just have some do-overs, his answer surprised me and taught me so much. He said, no, John, he said, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had a lot of crisis. I've had a lot of dark days in my life. I know what it's like to have adversity. He said, I got all of it. He said, it's happened to me dozens and dozens and dozens of times, but I don't want to go back and do any of them over. And it got quiet on the phone, and I was quiet. And I said, well, I don't understand. Why wouldn't you want to go back and do those over? He said, because the lessons I learned during the crisis, the lessons I learned gave me character. The lessons I learned during a crisis were lessons I would have never learned if I wouldn't have had that difficult time. He said, those lessons developed my willpower. Those lessons have made me bigger on the inside. And he said, the reason I wouldn't go back and do them over is if I wouldn't have had the crisis, I wouldn't have learned the lesson. And if I wouldn't have learned the lesson, I wouldn't have been the person on the inside that I am today. He said, I don't want to go back and do them over. And when he said that, I thought that's some of the greatest wisdom that I've ever heard. Right now, in the middle of this crisis, guess what? You and I would like to have do-overs. We would like to say it never happened, or we'd like to wave a magic wand and have it all disappear. We have no control over this. We don't like the discomfort of having our routines messed up, and we certainly don't like the fact that we're losing jobs and people are having health scares, and we hate the fact that people die. There is nothing good that we can see right now in the crisis because it's a crisis. It presses in on us. But trust me. Trust me. Trust me. Hold steady. Be strong. Develop your willpower muscles. Every day go to the gym of adversity and look at it and say, you are bigger than me right now, but I am developing an inside that's not only going to help me survive, but it's going to make me a better person, and it's going to make me a bigger person. And that's what I believe for you. That's what I want for you. That's what I pray for you. That's why I'm taking time to be with you. Because we're in this together. And you will make it. Trust me. My name is John, and I'm your friend.